The environmental impact of wars begins long before they do. Building and sustaining military forces consumes vast quantities of resources. These might be common metals or rare earth elements, water or hydrocarbons. Maintaining military readiness means training, and training consumes resources. Military vehicles, aircraft, vessels, buildings, and infrastructure all require energy, and more often than not, that energy is oil, and energy efficiency is low. The CO2 emissions of the largest militaries are greater than that of many of the world's countries combined. It is estimated that militaries are responsible for 5.5% of all greenhouse gas emissions globally. However, military emissions reporting to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change is poor. Militaries also need large areas of land and sea, whether for bases or facilities or for testing and training. Military lands are believed to cover between 1 to 6% of the global land surface. In many cases, these are ecologically important areas. While excluding public development from these areas can be a benefit to biodiversity, the question of whether they could be better managed as civil protected areas is rarely discussed. Military training creates emissions, disruptions to landscapes and terrestrial and marine habits, and creates chemical and noise pollution from the use of weapons, aircraft, and vehicles. Sustaining and renewing military equipment and material means ongoing disposal costs with implications for the environment. It is not just the most hazardous nuclear and chemical weapons that create environmental problems throughout their life cycle. The same is also true for conventional weapons, particularly where they are disposed of through open burning or detonation. Historically, vast quantities of surplus munitions were also dumped at sea. A history of weak environmental oversight has left many countries with serious environmental legacies linked to military pollution, with impacts on public health and vast costs for environmental remediation. These continue to grow as emerging pollutants like PFAS are identified. These legacies are also a problem around overseas bases, where one-sided agreements with host nations can reduce environmental oversight. Indirectly, high levels of military spending diverts resources away from solving environmental problems and away from sustainable development. International tensions stoked by high levels of military spending also reduce opportunities for international cooperation on global environmental threats, such as the climate emergency. It is also important to consider how security policies and militarism are tailored to ensuring access to and control of natural resources like oil, gas, water, and metals. The environmental impact of conflicts themselves vary greatly. Some international armed conflicts may be brief but highly destructive. Some civil wars may last for decades but be fought at low intensity. Many contemporary conflicts have blurred the lines, lasting years, but with sustained periods of high-intensity warfare. Who is fighting, where they're fighting, and how they're fighting all strongly influence the environmental impact of a conflict. High-intensity conflicts require and consume vast quantities of fuel, leading to massive CO2 emissions and contributing to climate change. Large-scale vehicle movements can lead to widespread physical damage to sensitive landscapes and geodiversity, as can the intensive use of explosive ordnance. The use of explosive weapons in urban areas creates vast quantities of debris and rubble, which can cause air and soil pollution. Pollution can also be caused by damage to light industry and environmentally sensitive infrastructure such as water treatment plants. The loss of energy supplies can have reverberating effects that are detrimental to the environment, shutting down treatment plants or pumping systems, or lead to the use of more polluting fuels or domestic generators. Severe pollution incidents can be caused when industrial, oil, or energy facilities are deliberately attacked, inadvertently damaged, or disrupted. In some cases, deliberate attacks on oil or industrial facilities are used as a weapon of war to pollute large areas and spread terror. Other scorched earth techniques include the destruction of agricultural infrastructure like canals, wells, and pumps, and the burning of crops. Tactics like these threaten food security and livelihoods, increasing the vulnerability of rural communities. Whether unintended or deliberate, these large-scale pollution incidents can lead to transboundary impacts from air pollution or through the contamination of rivers, aquifers, or the sea. In some instances, they even have the potential to affect weather or the global climate. Weapons and military material used during conflicts also leave environmental legacies. Landmines, cluster munitions, and other explosive remnants of war can restrict access to agricultural land and pollute soils with water sources that are destroyed with metals and toxic energetic materials. In major conflicts, large volumes of military scrap may be produced or abandoned. This can contain chronic health risks. Wrecked or damaged ships, submarines, and offshore oil infrastructure can cause marine pollution. Many conventional weapons have toxic constituents. Others, such as depleted uranium, are also radioactive. Incendiary weapons, such as white phosphorus, are not only toxic, but can also damage habitats through fire. While now restricted, the widespread use of chemical defoliants damaged public and ecological health across large areas of Vietnam. Easy access to small arms and light weapons can harm wildlife through facilitating increased hunting and poaching. And the ungoverned spaces created by conflict create the ideal conditions for wildlife crime. Weapons used in wildlife crime have been found to have been sourced from countries affected by conflict. Scientists and researchers may be unable to access areas due to security problems, harming conservation programs. While national parks and protected areas may lose what protection they had, or protecting them may be more difficult when poachers are armed, these situations can encourage more militarized conservation, which can have negative effects on relationships with local communities. Deforestation often increases during conflicts. Much of the time, this is due to overharvesting by communities who are suddenly reliant on wood and charcoal for fuel and heating. But it could also be as a result of armed or criminal gangs taking advantage of the collapse of management systems. Civilian coping strategies can also lead to the overharvesting of other natural resources or to environmentally damaging practices such as artisanal oil refining. And in some cases, community systems of sustainable resource management may be disrupted. Environmental damage and degradation can also stem from resource extraction used to finance conflicts. In many conflicts, armed groups vie for control over oil, mineral resources, or timber. Processing methods such as the use of mercury and gold mining can pollute water bodies. In addition to armed groups and artisanal workers, private companies may also be active in areas affected by conflict, often operating with minimal environmental oversight. Human displacement is common to many conflicts. Camps for refugees and internally displaced peoples can have large environmental footprints, particularly where they are unplanned or lack essential services like water, sanitation, and waste management. Their location is also important, as camp residents may be compelled to use local resources such as firewood, which could place local resources under pressure. People displaced by conflict may also move internally to urban areas, swelling the population and placing local environmental services under strain. In some cases, the areas where displaced people move through may be placed under pressure. For example, herders moving their livestock through sensitive ecosystems. Large-scale Refugee movements can also create transboundary environmental impacts when areas in neighboring countries struggle to cope with the influx of people and with meeting their basic needs. One basic need common to displacement camps and to urban areas experiencing conflict is waste management. Systems often break down during conflict, leading to increased rates of waste dumping and burning, improper management, and less waste segregation. It is rare these days for conflicts to conclude cleanly with a peace agreement and a ceasefire. Low-level conflict and insecurity can continue for long periods. In this respect, many of the forms of harm that occur during conflicts are also applicable to this phase, particularly in early stages. The presence of military forces can extend well into post-conflict phase. The operation and ultimate closure or handover of bases are associated with pollution issues, particularly where the host nation may be unable to enforce environmental standards. The use of practices like burn pits has exposed military personnel and communities to hazardous pollution, leaving veterans with ongoing health problems. The post-conflict clearance of landmines and explosive remnants of war can lead to soil degradation and localized pollution, and negative changes in land use when areas are released back to communities. The damage that conflicts do to environmental governance can have implications for environmental protection for years. This can set back progress on issues as diverse as pollution control, resource and protected area management, climate change adaptation, and biodiversity protection. Finally, the environmental costs of recovery may be significant. In this time of the climate crisis, overuse of all of Earth's resources, war is insane. War is what is leading to collapse. Collapse. Just what we need. Definitions. First, we're going to hear what the types of mass atrocities are. Brought to you by the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, which is an academic endeavor. Crimes against humanity. Any of the following acts, when committed as part of a widespread or systemic attack directed against any civilian population: murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation, imprisonment, torture, rape, and other gender-based or sex crimes, group-based prosecution, enforced disappearance, apartheid, and other inhumane acts of similar character, intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body, mental health, or physical health. Ethnic cleansing. The term ethnic cleansing refers to the forced removal of an ethnic group from a territory. A United Nations Commission of Experts investigating the former Yugoslavia defined it as rendering an area ethnically homogeneous by using force or intimidation to remove persons of given groups from the area. Unlike crimes against humanity, genocide, and war crimes, ethnic cleansing is not recognized as a standalone crime under international law. However, the practice of ethnic cleansing may constitute genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes. Genocide. It's defined as any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Mass atrocities, instances of large-scale systemic violence against civilian populations, although the term mass atrocities has no formal legal definition, it usually refers to genocide. As defined above, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing. Mass killing, the deliberate actions of armed groups, including but not limited to the state security forces, rebel armies, and other militias that result in the deaths of at least 1,000 non-combatant civilians targeted as part of a specific group over a period of 1 year or less. War crimes are serious violations of international humanitarian law and occur in the state of armed conflict. The Rome Statute lists numerous acts that may constitute war crimes, including attacks on civilians, forcibly recruiting and using child soldiers, and destruction of educational and religious institutions. Countries. 30 countries at highest risk of genocide worldwide in 2022 and 3. Pakistan, Yemen, Myanmar, Chad, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Afghanistan, India, Sudan, Somalia, Syria, Iraq, Guinea, Zimbabwe, Congo Republic, Central African Republic, Thailand, the DR Congo, Uganda, Mozambique, Burundi, Indonesia, China, Mali, Tanzania, Libya, Egypt, Rwanda, Cote d'Ivoire, and Iran. Country case studies. Afghanistan. The Taliban are persecuting and committing other egregious human rights violations against ethnic and religious minorities, women and girls, and perceived opposition groups since retaking control of Afghanistan in August 2021. ISIS-K, an Islamic State affiliate, have also systematically targeted ethnic and religious minorities, particularly the Hazara community. Growing restrictions on targeted groups within the country put civilians at great risk. Armenia. Between 1915 and autumn of 1916, the Ottoman Empire arrested, deported, conducted mass killings and created conditions intended to cause widespread death among the country's Armenian Christian citizens, most of whom were living in the territory of modern-day Turkey. Between 664,000 and 1.2 million Armenian men, women, and children died in the genocide. Bangladesh emerged as a secular democracy in 1971 after a bloody independence war from Pakistan was marked by mass killings by the Pakistani army and its collaborators. Our 2017 report examines scenarios in which Bangladesh could plausibly experience large-scale systemic attacks on civilians and explores ways to help avert those. Bosnia and Herzegovina. An estimated 100,000 people were killed during the conflict in Bosnia between 1992 and 95, including the July 1995 genocide of 8,000 Bosnian Muslims from Srebrenica. Learn about what happened, and you can learn on this website. Burma. Our Bearing Witness trips reports detail the genocide committed against Burma's Muslim Rohingya minority in 2017, as well as threats to them and other religious communities in Burma. Cambodia. Between 1975 and 1979, Cambodia's Khmer Rouge subjected the country's citizens to forced labor, persecution, and execution in the name of the regime's ruthless agrarian ideology. Almost 2 million people, approximately 1/3 of the country's population, died in the killing fields. Learn more about that also. Cameroon. When English-speaking civilians began protesting discriminatory government policies in 2016, government security forces cracked down violently. Now these forces and armed separatist groups from the English-speaking population are fighting. Each side is targeting civilians it perceives as disloyal. More than 6,000 people have been killed and over 600,000 internally displaced since 2017. Central African Republic. What began in 2013 as political violence initiated by rebel groups opposing the government of the Central African Republic took on a religious dimension, with groups and individuals being targeted because of their Christian or Muslim identity. China. The Chinese government is systematically persecuting the Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities on the basis of their religion and ethnicity. The museum is gravely concerned that the Chinese government may be committing genocide against the Uyghurs. There is also reasonable basis to believe that the government of China is committing crimes against humanity. Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire has a history of crimes against humanity and other mass atrocities, particularly during electoral periods. There were many concerns in the run-up to the 2020 election where violence ultimately was prevented, but thousands were forced to flee and 85 people were killed. Political actors within Côte d'Ivoire must maintain short-term peace and stability while also addressing long-term grievances, democracy, and risks for renewed violence. Democratic Republic of the Congo. More than 5 million civilians have died in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in a series of complex wars and conflicts. Most have died from preventable diseases as a result of the collapse of the infrastructure, lack of food and health care, and displacement. Ethiopia. A civil war started in November of 2020, and Ethiopia's Tigray region has devolved into a brutal conflict that threatens the well-being of millions. The conflict includes multiple armed actors, several of whom are alleged to be committing mass atrocities. From the beginning of the war, witnesses reported the intentional targeting of civilians, often along ethnic lines. Indonesia. Indonesia is currently experiencing an increase in political tensions, extremism, and violent conflict in the Papua region. There are early warning signs of large-scale violence against civilians. Violence between indigenous Papuan supporters of Papua's independence movement and the Indonesian government has intensified and is further complicated by the increasing fragmentation within indigenous Papuan group, as well as increasing migration into Papua. In 2014, in Iraq, the self-proclaimed Islamic State conducted a violent campaign against civilians in northern Iraq, targeting ethnic and religious minorities and committing genocide against the Yazidi people. The violence displaced more than 800,000 people and resulted in the deaths of hundreds, if not thousands, of civilians. Mali is currently facing numerous armed conflicts. Violence between herders and farmers in the country's central regions continue to escalate, taking on an increasingly ethnic tone. Mali has faced severe political instability in recent years, including coups in August 2020 and May 2021. Rwanda. In 1994, between 500,000 and 1 million Rwandans were massacred in a genocide when a Hutu extremist led government launched a plan to wipe out the country's entire Tutsi minority and any others who opposed their policies. South Sudan in 2013, just 2 years after South Sudan became an independent country, a civil war erupted. Almost 400,000 people were killed and nearly 4 million displaced. Today, the country faces great challenges as it seeks to implement a fragile peace deal and resolve ongoing ethnic conflicts. Sudan. Since the 1950s, the Arab-dominated government of Sudan has tried to impose its control over populations from the nation's more culturally, religiously, and linguistically diverse regions outside the capital. More than 2.5 million civilians have been killed in a succession of brutal conflicts across many regions, including genocide in Darfur against the Fur, Zaghawa, and Masalit ethnic groups between 2003 and 2005. Syria. Since March 2011, the conflict in Syria has cost the lives of nearly 500,000 people, displaced millions more, and involved numerous atrocities and crimes against humanity. Our reports outline the atrocities the Syrian regime is committing against its own people and the threats that remain for those living in the country. Ukraine. Since launching its military invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Russian forces have perpetuated attacks against civilian populations. There is a reasonable basis to conclude that these attacks constitute war crimes and crimes against humanity. In justifying the attack, Russian President Vladimir Putin has misrepresented and misappropriated Holocaust history to be claiming falsely that democratic Ukraine needs to be denazified. Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's ruling party has used mass atrocities against civilians to repress political opponents and consolidate power since the country gained independence from the United Kingdom in 1980. There's a lot. Check out the website. None of this is new. Wars, crimes against humanity, genocide has been going on since we stood upright. These are just some of the things. And the website needs to be updated for the current atrocities being committed in Gaza and the atrocity that was committed in the beginning by Hamas. Two wrongs don't make a right. Learn history. It's been going on forever. Culture and the water and the problems. And it gets annoying to see things that should be talked about more than just everybody's gut hatred.
Hi, this is Sean with DERY. I'm here in Gaza at the Patients Friends Society Hospital in the middle of Gaza City, and I'm here looking at the brand new reverse osmosis water filtration system. Here you can see the panel here showing the status. You can put it in English if you'd like. And this project was brought to you by Humanity First UK. It's a $23,000 project for the whole system, including a solar panel system to run the energy. This serves 8,000 patients a day with 20 cubic a month, 8,000 patients a month with 20 cubic meters of purified water, better than what the hospital was paying for each month before Humanity First UK and DERY installed this system. They were paying about $2,000 a month for water, and this water is purified enough to be used in the laboratories that necessitate having distilled water. So thank you very much, Humanity First UK, for this support. I can tell you everyone here at the hospital is very grateful. Thank you.
they don't have enough water treatment plants for the for all those people. And especially think about this. Where are they going when they are forced to leave their homes? Where are they going? Anybody think about where people are going to the bathroom? I mean, think about what the Mediterranean must really right now be like, environmentally speaking. Now, collaborating across borders, young professionals in the Middle East tackle the region's water issues. So there's been a lot of work between people. There have been Israeli, Jordanian, Palestinian participants. There have been people that have wanted to do all of this for that area and work across geopolitical tensions. I mean, it does happen, and especially in academia. Israel's systematic targeting of Gaza's energy, sewage, and water infrastructure, which is integral to any food system, and its refusal to allow access to equipment for repair or replacement has accelerated what the UN describes as Gaza development. Airstrikes on Gaza only power plant and largest sewage treatment plant in 2008 resulted in the release of 100,000 cubic meters of sewage into the neighboring homes and farmland. In 2018, Israeli destruction of sanitation infrastructure resulted in further environmental breakdown, leaving raw, solid, and liquid wastes being discharged into the Mediterranean, threatening fish stocks that Gazan fishers and consumers depend on. Internationally funded sewage treatment plants may for now have reduced sewage flows, but there remains the persistent threat of limited capacity, faltering energy supplies, and future attacks. Shrinking territory. Israel disengaged from Gaza in 2005, purportedly to return land previously under Israeli settlements and militarized zones, yet occupation was effectively increased in the form of access restricted areas. So over a third of Gaza's farmland is in these no-go zones along the northern and eastern borders that once formed the territory's fruit and bread baskets. The exact range of the zone is undeclared, but is understood to vary between 300 and 1,000 meters. Those who stray too close to the area risk being shot and their equipment confiscated or destroyed. Along the 60-kilometer land border, Israel deploys border posts manned by remote control machine guns, ground sensors, and drones. Similarly, access to Mediterranean waters is restricted to between 6 and 15 nautical miles from the coast, depriving Gaza's artisanal fishers of full access to the most productive fishing grounds. Already in 2022, now it's not updated, there have been 644 incidents of shootings to prevent access to land or sea, destruction of farmland. Despite the now normalized blockade and regular airstrikes, land invasions still pose the most significant threat. Between 2000 and 2008, it estimated that 112,000 olive trees were uprooted during Israeli incursions. After Operation Cast Lead 2008-9, the UN documented destruction of soils, vegetable crops, orchard, livestock, wells, hatcheries, beehives, greenhouses, irrigation networks, barns, and stables. Replacement of young fruit trees are ill-adapted to saline conditions, so no, they cannot survive. So after Operation Protective Edge in 2014, the UN was denied access, but reported that the destruction of critical infrastructure had become a recurring reality. Look at that. Destroyed. It's disgusting. Biannual herbicide spraying by Israel, allegedly for security purposes, damages hundreds of acres of crops, and regular incursions with bulldozers destroy many more acres of farmland. Compensation for the destruction of farmland and infrastructure by the Israeli state is supposed to be met by the UN through contributions from member states. To date, no compensation has been made to Palestinian farmers. Ultimately, the international community, in supporting food security while quietly covering the cost of damage, remains complicit in its silence. Israel's violence against Palestinian food and farming systems renders dignified, healthy food impossible. Gaza, before much longer, may indeed become uninhabitable.
This is not ice melting into a mountain river. This is what happens when thousands of cubic meters of sewage are discharged into a river in the Gaza Strip. Thousands of liters of untreated wastewater pour into the Wadi Gaza River every day. The polluted water snakes through urban areas towards the sea. It jeopardizes the health of many families living beside it, contaminates the coast, and endangers biodiversity. The population in the Gaza Strip also suffers from a serious lack of sanitation. In many of Gaza's poorer neighborhoods, homes are not connected to sewers at all.
Israel, almost half of whose territory is occupied by deserts. The issue of water extraction has also been acute at all times. For a long time, the main source of fresh water was Lake Kinneret. In 1952, the new state began to build a national water supply system, a network of pipelines, canals, and reservoirs for the supply of water from natural reservoirs and Lake Kinneret in particular. Simultaneously, the construction of hundreds of wells for the extraction of water from underground aquifers was launched in the country. However, despite significant successes in the fight for fresh water, it was still not enough to meet the agricultural needs of the state. Amid a rapidly expanding population and booming industry, Israel is faced with a new challenge. Over the years, the country's average rainfall has decreased, and water resources have been depleted. Faced with new challenges, the Israeli government decided to turn its attention to the Mediterranean Sea as a new main source of water for agriculture. Nowadays, 50% of Israel's total water consumption is desalinated seawater. However, the country also uses other unique technologies for the sustainable development of agriculture. Israel has made tremendous progress in the so-called recycled water technology. It is about reusing water for irrigation of agricultural land by recycling wastewater. Since the 2000s, the country has invested over $750 million in centralized water treatment. This added 37 billion gallons per year to the country's total water production. Currently, there are 67 large wastewater treatment plants in Israel, 10 of which treat more than 56% of the country's wastewater collection. At the same time, the largest water treatment enterprise is the Shafdan Wastewater Treatment Plant. The plant, named a model by the United Nations, treats 97 million gallons of Tel Aviv's urban wastewater per day. Water from the sewage system undergoes secondary biological and tertiary treatment and is then transported through a pipeline to irrigate 60% of agricultural land in the Negev Desert.
نيجي الصبحيات بنشتغل نطلع على الشحن نيجي الصبحيات بدري كل واحد بيكون معاه سكينته البصل وبيجي كل واحد بيقعد في شوره وبدنا ايش نقص بصل بننقه من الورق من الوسخ البصل بنقصه نوديه جاهز على السوق متعب كثير بنشتغل تقريبا 10 ساعات 8 ساعات تعب زي هيك طول اليوم احنا بنشتغل في نفس الوقت يعني خطر وخوف لأننا قريبين على الحدود ممكن يصير طخ بيجي علينا يعني إلي أخو في 2011 كان يشتغل زي هيك فجأة اليهود صار إطلاق نار على اليهود واليهود ردت وخبط أخوي قديفه وهو العمال ومات طبعا هو في المنطقة هنا في القريبة تبعد يعني أبو 500 متر عن المنطقة هذه.
Amounts of water and fertilizer. Israeli hydraulic engineer Simha Blas in 1956 proposed a way to deliver moisture and fertilizer literally drop by drop directly to the roots of plants. This technology was born completely by accident. Noticing that one tree was more luxuriant than the others in the backyard, Blas dug up the soil near the tree trunk and found that water was dripping from the damaged pipe and fell directly to the roots. It took Blas and his team years to bring the idea to its logical conclusion. But ultimately, the drip system helped restart agriculture in Israel and 109 other countries around the world, from sugarcane fields in the Philippines to tea plantations in Tanzania. Israeli drip irrigation technology is not only flexible hoses made of stabilized polyethylene with drips that equalize the flow of water along the entire length of the pipeline. The system includes devices for water purification and filtration, fittings for distributing water throughout the field, as well as equipment for dissolving and dosing fertilizers, and of course automatic.
The Gaza Valley, or Wadi Gaza, was once a picturesque nature reserve popular among sightseers and holidaymakers. Now it's a no-go zone for visitors, and residents can barely stand to live there.
We hate it here because of the mosquitoes and the overpowering smell. When night comes and we try to sleep, we can't sleep because of the bad smell. The smell is so strong that it reaches the city of the Burej near us, and even the residents there complain about it. In the past, people used to come here to take a walk and sit in the valley and say proudly, "We're going to the Gaza Valley," but nobody comes here anymore.
Wadi Gaza is the largest natural wetland in the territory and was declared a natural reserve over 2 decades ago. Since then, its biodiversity and natural resources have deteriorated dramatically. Pollution from landfill, effluent and pesticides threatens public health too and risks poisoning the groundwater. With sewage treatment plants overwhelmed, millions of liters of raw or poorly treated sewage are discharged into the Wadi Gaza wetlands and from there into the sea. Thankfully, not far away, a new treatment plant has been built, financed by a $100 million grant from the German Development Bank. It's vastly improved Gaza's sewage treatment capacity, processing more than 60% of the territory's wastewater.
Once the treatment plant was completed, municipalities through local or international funders started constructing sewage networks and connecting them to the treatment plant. This helps to minimize all environmental risks that affect the aquifer. They will also enable people to live and would assist in urban expansion in different areas.
But power shortages, the blockade and Israeli airstrikes mean the system continually breaks down. Environmentalists say the new facility helps, but it's nowhere near enough.
In Gaza City and the central region, more than 80,000 or 90,000 cubic meters are produced per day. Part of it is treated, and unfortunately, there is another part that doesn't get treated due to the dilapidated capacities of the treatment plants in Gaza. Many of the quantities that reach the treatment plants arrive during the power outages when the plant is not working.
Besieged Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world. That makes waste management a particularly important public health issue. But unless Israel lifts the blockade and allows infrastructure to recover, Palestinians will have to live with the stench for the foreseeable future.
hate the leaders, hate the system, don't hate the people. To all the clueless morons and idiots that deny that the climate is changing, I'm going to go over a list of things for them, for you. Understand, everything that's happening now, wars, now it's Pakistan and India, trade, tariffs, which everyone, especially in the United States, is flipping out about because they're not going to be able to consume. Although, of course, we know Trump is not the eco-fascist president. He's just doing this because he's a clueless moron and really doesn't understand economics or what he's doing. But let's get back to this. I want to talk about why deniers are wrong, okay? So the first thing is, well, CO2 levels are over. What are they? Over 420 ppm, highest in 800,000 years due to fossil fuel burning. 2, global temperatures have risen 1.1 C since pre-industrial times, linked to human emissions, friends. And that's from the IPCC. Extra weather like heat waves and hurricanes is more frequent, driven by human-caused warming. Over 97% of climate scientists agree humans cause climate change. And the ice core data, that shows current CO2 rise is unprecedented, correlating with industrial activity. Now, NASA and NOAA and the IPCC have no clear, logical reason to lie about climate change. Absolutely not. But of course, if you talk to the clueless morons, clueless Republican morons, no less, you'll hear a lot of that. You'll hear a lot, oh, the climate is always changing, because they will parrot the bullshit that they hear on Fox, OAN, and Newsmax. The data, based on peer-reviewed science and transparent processes, it aligns with a 97% scientific consensus on human-caused warming. Yep. Controversies like the 2017 NOAA study dispute were investigated and showed no data manipulation. While some suggest political or funding pressures could influence them, evidence supports their integrity. Skepticism is valid, as always, but no systemic dishonesty is even evident. Concealing a real climate data, snafu or bullcrap or whatever, it would be extremely difficult, bordering on impossible. Climate data comes from thousands of global sources, whether weather stations, satellites, independent researchers, making centralized control nearly impossible, friends. Publicly accessible data sets from NOAA and NASA allow anyone to verify findings. Peer review and a 97% scientific consensus further ensure transparency. Historical allegations like ClimateGate were investigated and debunked. Now, biases from funding or politics could exist. There's always a could. The global nature of climate science makes large-scale deception highly unlikely to go undetected. Now what I want to talk about is all of the things that the orange turd, Donald Trump's administration, is doing to bring us closer to human extinction. I mean, it's happening. Human extinction. Don't believe me, but we are not in good shape at all. And the United States is driving the nails in the coffin of humanity. So they have taken comprehensive rollbacks, and the latest is today, not having climate data even. Nope, they're not even taking that into consideration. Now the U.S. is going to stop tracking the costs of extreme weather. So how's that going to be for insurance companies in the United States? They want to stop tracking wildfires and storms and other billion-dollar disasters, which are growing more frequent. And the New York Times is reporting on this, and so is WAPO, the big, conglomerates of billionaire-owned papers. But they're good stories. I'm not going to deny them. It's happening. The NOAA said Thursday it would stop tracking the cost of the country's most expensive disasters, which cost at least $1 billion in damage. They could just forget it, out of sight, out of mind, just like everything else in this administration. But what I really do want to talk about is everything they've done. Withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, which he did on January 2025. He signed another executive order, because this is all he does, is sign executive orders, marking the U.S. second withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. So there's a retreat from international climate commitments. And of course, climate groups and scientists think this is short-sighted, even if nothing's happening. No, I mean, really think about it. I think it's good to be in the Paris Climate Agreement, but I also see that things are just getting worse, as I've read to you. Dismantling climate data resources. The NOAA announced the retirement of its billion-dollar weather and climate disaster database, which goes into the New York Times article I just read you. It's a critical tool for tracking the financial impact of climate-related events. Good luck getting your house rebuilt. Good luck having a house. Good luck having an apartment. Can't wait to see what happens during the next hurricane in Florida. Why doesn't it hit Mar-a-Lago? It really reduces transparency, and it hampers public understanding of the climate risks. Also cutting national park funding. The administration proposed cutting approximately $26 million in grants across the U.S. National Park Service, affecting programs aimed at enhancing diversity and youth participation in park management. And the air quality monitoring programs have also been halted. Oh, that's another good one. Repealing the Clean Water Rule. So in 2019, the Trump administration repealed the 2015 Clean Water Rule, which protected small streams and wetlands from pollution. This rollback left vast areas vulnerable to potential pollution and degradation, which is the United States is degraded in every which way. They rolled back methane emission standards. They weakened vehicle emission standards. They're revoking mercury emission regulations. They're opening protected lands for fossil fuel development, which is just, it's a sickening thing. That's making me sick. President Orange Turd lifted bans on oil and gas exploration in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and other protected areas, prioritizing fossil fuel development over conservation efforts. This ought to make you so angry. Reducing environmental review requirements. The administration updated the National Environmental Policy Act to limit environmental reviews of projects to 2 years, reduce the role of climate change in assessments, and exclude some projects from environmental assessment requirements. Repealing the Stream Protection Rule, defunding NASA's carbon monitoring system, disbanding the Social Cost of Carbon Group, replacing the Clean Power Plan, halting methane leak regulations. That's great, isn't it? Reducing coal plant water pollution limits, accelerating infrastructure projects without environmental reviews. So it goes on and on and on. And if you think that it's just this administration, no, it's other countries. Other countries are polluting. That's why we send all of our manufacturing to China and other countries that don't give a shit. We are not on a good road, humanity. Look at all of the different collapsing civilizations over history. And then add in irreversible climate change. How do you think that we're going to survive this? How? I want to know. I mean, I know that there's a lot of opium addicts out there, and that's okay. I know that there are people working on solutions in every which way. But really, with all of the problems that are going on, Ecocide International and build, growth, because the domestic product here, gross domestic product in the United States is built on growth. There is no degrowth. Green energy has a lot of greenwashing in it. Even if I do have an EcoFlow battery for backup, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's my mood today, but every single thing that this administration does in every which area is eclipsed by the climate and overshoot crisis. And if you don't think so, then you don't have your eyes open. There is nothing that's going to withstand what's coming. And I'm really sorry to say it, but in my research and everything I read, interviews, talks with people, oh yeah, we're not stopping.